This is a graph that represents the total cumulative net income of all the teams participating in the simulation. If you look at the pink or peach colored sliver of the graph, that represents our portion of the total net income. Our total percentage of the total cumulative net income is 9%, with over $2 million in net income. If you look at the total amount of net income that we accumulated during the simulation, we did fairly well compared to other competing groups. Our net income was accumulated over 5 quarters. If you look at the next graph, it shows the net income for each quarter for just our group. This graph shows the net income per quarter for our group. For the first quarter, you can see that we accumulated over $200,000 in net income. This was our lowest amount of net income that we had during the 5 quarters. As you look at the graph, you can see that our highest amount of income we had during the third quarter was over $1 million in net income. As we progressed during the simulation, we earned more net income than our first 2 quarters. Even though our third quarter was our greatest, our fourth and fifth quarters were productive because this is where we begin to specialize our production, which we will cover later in the presentation. However, we will move forward into the total net sales. Now that we have covered cumulative net income and net income per quarter, let us now move into total net sales to show where the net income came from. The highlighted number and percentage represent our portion for our team. The percent represent the amount of sales that our group had relative to the entire market. With 10 groups that participate in the simulation, we made up 10% of the total sales. With nearly $9.7 million in sales, we finished 5th in total sales. Just as with net income, this was accumulated over 5 quarters. To keep things rolling, let us now move into the total sales per quarter, just to give you an idea of how much we sold per quarter. By breaking down the total sales into individual quarters, we will show how much we sold per quarter. This correlates perfectly with net income because the more we sold, the larger the net income. You can look at the graph and see how we were relatively consistent with the amount of sales that we had. In the first quarter, our sales were lowest because of many different reasons, but mainly our pricing was too high. We will cover our pricing strategy later in the presentation, but as our sales increased, our pricing decreased. Until finally, in the last 2 quarters, we settled on our final prices and kept them the same. Basically, this concludes our results portion of the presentation. We cover net income and sales to give you a general idea of our progress through the simulation. We will move into our production portion of our presentation, where we will cover which products we produced, how many of each product, and why we produced each product. We will now show you 2 graphs that will show the total production of each product and the production of each product per quarter. The first graph, which as you can see, shows the total amount of each product we produced over the entire simulation. You will notice that 500 gram nut and original are the most produced products. We produced 500 gram nut and original the most because these were our highest selling products. 500 gram nut had over $2 million in sales and 500 gram original had over $1.4 million in sales. Combining these 2 products together made up 1/3 of all the sales we had. We also focused on 1 kilogram nut and original, which were our next highest produced products. They did not make up nearly the amount that 500 gram nut and original made up, but these 4 products made up the majority of the products that we provided to customers. This outlined our final production strategy because we wanted to focus on the products that made us the largest profit. We felt that by focusing on nut and original, it would give us the greatest opportunity to make money. Let us now transition into the graph that shows the amount of products produced per quarter. By looking at this graph, you will notice that at the beginning we produced all products that we were originally given to us. As we progressed and noticed that we were not selling strawberry and blueberry, we decided to change them to 500 gram nut and original. We started to offer 500 gram nut in the second quarter and 500 gram original not until the fourth quarter. Finally, in the 5th quarter, this is when we had our strategy in place on what we were going to produce. The only downside was that we had limitation on the amount of products we could produce in the given quarter. This is a general overview of the production strategy that we implemented during the simulation. Without further ado, let us now move into the pricing strategy portion of the presentation. Our pricing strategy was relatively consistent throughout the entire simulation. We were consistently changing the price of our products to compete with consumer demand, but on average our prices were relatively consistent. By looking at this graph, which shows the average price for each product per quarter, you can see that there was a slight decrease in the prices as we progressed. As the simulation moved on, our prices became based on the products that we were mainly focusing on, as I stated in the production strategy. Looking at this graph will also show you that our prices were lower than when we began because we were starting to specialize. By specializing, this allowed us to offer our products at a lower price to consumers. This in turn allowed us to sell all of our products that we had in stock. Having excess inventory never became a problem when we figured out our pricing strategy. To conclude, by having a high price in the beginning did not allow us to move many products, but by lowering the price, we sold large amounts of products in a short amount of time. With 2 of the 3 strategies covered, let us now swing into the last one, the marketing strategy. We will now move into the final of the 3 strategies, which is marketing. Marketing allowed us to promote our products to the customers. The more money that we put into the marketing, the higher the sales that we had for each given product. allowing us to sell more products. The graph shown in the background shows the amount of marketing per product per region. This just gives you a general idea of how much marketing we use to promote each product. As you mentioned earlier, the more marketing that we used, the more sales that we had. The only drawback to this was that the more marketing that was put to a product, the higher the cost would be. If the amount of sales did not cover the cost of the marketing, then we would end up losing money, no matter how many products that we sold. This never happened to our group because we had a good idea of how much we could spend to keep us generating profit. As we moved into the later stages of the simulation, we focused our marketing on only the products that we considered our main products. This concludes our strategies that we used to complete the simulation. The last thing that we will cover in our presentation to you is our conclusion on why we did what we did in the evaluation of our simulation. To conclude our presentation to you, we would like to discuss why we did what we did during the simulation. At the beginning, we had the idea of selling all the products that were given to our group in the beginning. We then evolved our strategies to focus on the main products that our group felt would allow us to make the most profit, which consisted of the 500 gram and 1 kilogram nut and original. We mainly focused on these products during the end of the simulation, but this product grouping allowed us to sell the most amount of products for the greatest amount of money. We hindered our performance by not being able to produce as much as we would have liked. If we could have produced more products, then our sales would have been much higher than they were. That being the case, we stocked out of many of the products, which hurt our performance quite a bit because our customers could not purchase the goods that they wanted. All in all, we felt that our group performed well. We learned from our mistakes that we made and moved forward. We ended up posting 5 straight quarters of positive net income, and for the most part improved our performance as we move forward. This was a great learning experience, and it was a pleasure to work on this simulation. We hope you enjoyed our presentation and hope that you were pleased with the results that our group ended up with. Thank you for your time and have a good weekend.